Hey, good evening, champions. Welcome to tonight's edition of the Motivation to Elevation Facebook Live podcast. It's another awesome Tuesday night here in the STL. I am yours truly, Arian, Tyson, the Moving Motivator, and I will be before you momentarily. I got a nice topic for you, and I hope that you get value from it. Let's get it. If you're just hopping on, let me know by saying hello in the comments section.
Now in the Wells Fargo mobile app, you can request a one-time access code to use the ATM.
Just my phone.
Yeah.
That'll come in handy if it's...
How you all doing this evening? We are going to get started in just a few seconds. Appreciate everyone hopping on. Right on. Hey, champions, welcome to tonight's edition of the Motivation to Elevation Facebook Live podcast. It's yours truly, Arian, Tyson, the Moving Motivator, and I am sitting in my office here in St. Louis, and I am just honored to be before you tonight. If you had a bad day or it just didn't go well, put that to the side and just be here with me, focus with me, and let's just dive in and just enjoy this time that we have together. If you get value from it, let me know in the comment section. And then once this podcast is up, feel free to share it on your Facebook wall, share it everywhere, because someone needs to hear this information. Having said all that, we talk about success a lot. Everybody wants to be successful. But in order for you to truly embrace and appreciate success in any area of life, whether it's in business, whether it's on a job, whether it's in relationships, etc., you got to be able to understand and handle failure. Having said all that, I'm going to talk about how to handle failure tonight. Because the reality is that people fail. All of us fail. Failure itself isn't a problem, but it can be devastating if you don't respond accordingly to it, if you respond poorly to it. That is, it's up to you what failure means to you. Now, for a lot of people, there are some people that are actually motivated by failure. Whereas there are other people that are slowed by failure. And then there are several people that are just absolutely paralyzed by failure. They experience some type of failure or some type of setback, and they just feel like all hope is gone. And they sit up and they cry, oh, woe is me. And they will sit up and go cry a river, etc. But the thing about it is, I want to share with you some ways of how to handle failure. And I'm actually going to share with you 5 ways. It's more ways, but I'm going to just give you 5 because I don't want to take too much of your time. So let's dive in. And if you have a pen and pad, I suggest you take notes. If you don't, if something stick out, put it in the comment section. So let's dive in. The first thing that I would say, the first way to handle failure is you have to devalue individual attempts. What do I mean by that? You know, right now, the NBA playoffs are going on. And I often reference the greatest basketball player ever, and that would be Michael Jordan. Here's what a lot of people may still not know. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team. If that was his one and only attempt to become a basketball star, he would not have succeeded. But he had many more opportunities to show his talent, to show his gift, and prove those coaches wrong, and subsequently become the greatest player ever. Those who struggle to handle failure tend to overemphasize that one instance in which they failed. They overvalue its true importance, which is almost always small, even when it seems significant. Think about this. One thing that I love about the game of basketball is that basketball is a great metaphor for failure because of the nature of shooting. Any player who misses their first shot must understand that there will be more opportunities to shoot. And one miss doesn't mean that they'll have a bad game. They might miss their first shot and then make their next 10 in a row. They might miss their first 5 shots and then make the next 5. One instance of failure, ladies and gentlemen, does not mean another one is inevitable. Someone put that in the comment section. So I'm going to repeat it again. One instance of failure does not mean another one is inevitable. I'm going to say it one more time. One instance of failure does not mean another one is inevitable. Think to yourself, ask yourself, or say to yourself, I will have many more opportunities. This is not the end. The second way to handle failure is to be proud of your pre-success. What I mean by that? Before any level of success happens, there will be evidence of it. Stand in basketball, okay? The Golden State Warriors look like they're on a collision course with the defending champion Cleveland Cavaliers right now. That's what it's looking like. I think about Steph Curry in this instance. Steph Curry is a basketball player and a great story. Now, I grew up a huge fan of watching his father, Dale Curry, because anyone that knows me knows I love three-point shooting. I have an affinity for three-point shooters, whether it's a Reggie Miller or Ray Allen or Steph Curry or Kevin Durant or Dirk Nowitzki. I love three-point shooting because, especially in the way that the NBA is now, it can definitely change the game. It can turn the game upside down. And it's living proof right now, the way that basketball is now, no matter how soft it is, that because of the proficiency of the three-point shot, no lead is safe. No lead is safe. And if I remember correctly, in one of the series, Cleveland came back from like 25 down. But let's get back to Golden State. Okay, let's get back to Steph Curry. Before Steph Curry reached his level of success that he has reached thus far, his doubters were numerous. They said he wasn't athletic enough. They said he wasn't strong enough. They said he couldn't finish inside well enough. But his incredible work ethic and frequent practicing were early indications that he would succeed. And now he sits here as a former NBA champion and a two-time league MVP. And he's not the biggest guy in the world. He's not the fastest guy in the world. He's not the most athletic guy in the world. But he earned both MVPs. Okay? His success, what I'm saying is, his success wasn't immediate once he entered the NBA. He struggled with turning over the ball. He struggled with injuries. He struggled with inconsistent play in his first few years. He was failing on some levels, but success was inevitable. He was putting in the work that would mold him into one of the most exciting players in the game today. And as I mentioned, Steph Curry is a two-time NBA MVP, and he already has a NBA World Championship on his resume. The third way to handle failure. Don't be surprised by failure. That's a doozy. Yeah, don't be surprised by failure. What do I mean by that? And I know it sounds bad to ask someone to basically expect failure. But the greatest athletes fail. I mentioned Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan, even though Michael Jordan went 6-0 in the NBA Finals and winning 6 MVPs, he had to go through some hurdles. He had to experience some failure to get to the NBA Finals to finally win his first championship. He had to go through Larry Bird and my Boston Celtics. He had to go through the bad boy Detroit Pistons. And it wasn't until he got some help. It wasn't until Scottie Pippen joined the team and then elevated himself to an all-star level that Michael Jordan was able to get over the hump and start winning championship after championship after championship. What do I say? What am I saying about that? The greatest people in their respective fields fail. They experience failure. Everyone fails. But those who find success do some combination of trying harder, using smarter strategies, and trying more times. If you walk away from something after one mishap, you're setting yourself back. And Rita, you're absolutely right. Because the thing about it is, and you said something right there. Because when they didn't believe in him, he believed in himself. What that means is you have to see yourself as victorious before the success comes. You have to. Nobody becomes a champion. Nobody develops a championship pedigree once they get the trophy. You have to see yourself as a champion before it even comes. Ask LeBron James. We're going to stick with the NBA because right now the NBA playoffs is where it's at right now. Before he finally won his first NBA title, and he's sitting on 3 right now. Before he won that first title, he saw himself as a champion. But guess what? He experienced failure. He got swept in the NBA Finals by the San Antonio Spurs. And even after taking his talents to South Beach and joining Dwayne Wade, who was already a champion, and Chris Bosh in Miami, they blew a 2-0 lead and lost 4 straight. And he lost his second time in the NBA Finals to the Dallas Mavericks. But he was able to bounce back because he knew that in order for him to be considered one of the greatest ever, definitely one of the greatest of this generation, you got to have a chip. So he bounced back and finally won his first title. And I remember distinctly what he said when he won that first title at the hands of the Oklahoma City Thunder. He said, "It's about damn time." That's exactly what he said. Because he had been in the league 9-10 years before he finally won his first title. But when you experience failure, when you experience adversity, once you achieve victory, once you get to that championship, you can't tell me it's not sweet. Because you had to grind for it. You worked for it. You earned it. And that's why it's so important to don't be surprised by failure. Thus, when you fail, it should not come as a surprise, but as an expected part of your journey to success. If you expect to fail sometimes, you won't be slowed by it. I'm going to say it again. If you expect to fail sometimes, you won't be slowed by it. Show me one successful person who hasn't failed. I'll wait. Show me one. Number 4. The fourth way to handle failure, and I hope that you're getting value from this, is you have to know your natural advantage. What do I mean by that? There's one critical advantage you have over failure. You only need to succeed once. And when you do, it will make up for all prior failures in that area. I'm going to say it again. You only need to succeed once. And when you do, it will make up for all prior failures in that area. Think about the inventor, Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison, because I like to use examples to hammer a point. Thomas Edison failed thousands of times before he ended up on the right track in helping to invent the light bulb. Now, the reason that I say that is because he gets too much credit for inventing the light bulb. And I'm just going to keep it 100 with you. Thomas Edison is not solely responsible for inventing the light bulb. There's a black man by the name of Lewis Latimer that helped him invent the light bulb. And if you don't believe me, do your research. But here's the thing. Edison failed thousands of times before he invented the one light bulb that improved human lighting forever. When you find the right partner, and this is from a relationship standpoint, when you find the right partner, previous failed relationships will be a distant memory, drowned by the love you two share for each other. Once you find the right strategy, whether it's in business or otherwise, you can use it over and over again. For example, those that know me on a personal level know that I embarked on a health journey several years ago. My struggles to exercise ended when I discovered the power of creating a small habit to help me get moving forward. And then think about this. Now, prior to Friday, I was in dire need of a haircut. But as you can see now, I really don't need no haircut because it's still semi-fresh. But what I'm saying about that is that your haircut might be bad now, but once you find the right style, you can get it cut the same way every time. And the thing about it is this. I'm a college graduate. And it wasn't until I graduated college where I struggled finding a job. And I literally was out of work for over 6 months. even after obtaining my bachelor's degree. And I had student loan debt that my degree was not helping to pay off. I still do have student loan debt, but it's not nearly as much as it was because I've actually paid one of my student loans off. But the thing about it was, at the end of the day, when you find yourself in a situation where things don't turn out the way that you anticipated, you have some choices to make. You can either let failure destroy you, you can let failure set you back, or you can let failure motivate you and push you harder to become more successful. So think about this. Failure creates an advantage because when you are successful, you can look back at your failures and truly appreciate your success because it was not handed to you on a silver platter. You fought for it. You went into grind mode for it. You went into beast mode for it. And guess what? You became successful. And so the greatest revenge that you could get on someone, on a naysayer, is to become successful at something that they said you can never be successful at. Think about what you have become successful at. How sweet is it? How much more sweeter it is when you achieve that success at that level when people didn't even expect you. They didn't even expect you to be an afterthought. They doubted you that much. They hated on you that much. But let your haters be your motivators and allow them to push you to greatness. And then finally, the fifth and final way tonight to handle failure is to embrace your humanity. Many times we go into things with unrealistic expectations. We go into starting a business. We go into embarking on a relationship, having unrealistic expectations. Here's the thing. Failure is not such a bad thing. There's often humor in it. For example, about 2 weeks ago, I fixed a bowl of salsa. And as I was walking to put it on the table, I inexplicably dropped the bowl, which turned over and it fell to the floor. The force of it hitting the floor and the pressure from the trapped air inside shot some of the salsa straight up onto the ceiling. And it was a devastating loss of salsa and embarrassing. But it was hilarious too. I laughed about it because had I not just said something, nobody would have known about it. But if you can laugh at yourself, you'll always have the last laugh. I'm going to say that again. If you can learn how to laugh at yourself, you'll always have the last laugh. There's definitely humanity in failure. That's the point I'm making. And too many people walk around trying to appear perfect, trying to act like they have it all together, when it's killing themselves inside. Too many people walking around trying to appear perfect to themselves and to other people. But guess what? They're lying to themselves. And if you're not careful, you're going to be lying to other people. Why? Because people know when you're talking nonsense. They know when you're not being genuine. They know when you're not being transparent. They know when you're not being authentic. They know you're not fooling anybody. And I suggest people wake up and pay attention because you're hurting nobody but yourself and you're making a fool out of yourself. And if you can't say amen, say ouch. But it is what it is. And I'm not going to apologize for it. It's the truth and I'm standing on that. Here's what I also know. When people walk around trying to be perfect, trying to carry this perfect image, they create a mask and they they continue to put on this facade, and then the facade continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And they fight to keep the facade going. But perfect performance is more of a machine-like trait than a human trait, ladies and gentlemen. We are broken and flawed, but that's okay. Because that's where grace and mercy comes in. Even when nobody else shows you grace and mercy. Thank God the Most High. Thank God that He shows us grace and mercy. Are you with me? Good-natured people who don't hide their flaws are genuinely or generally well-liked. That's because we get being flawed. While seeing a perfect person makes us feel less than adequate ourselves. And our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate. It's that we're powerful beyond measure. Being flawed is the most relatable human trait. I'm going to say it again. Being flawed is the most relatable human trait. It's like saying, yeah, I could drop a bowl of salsa like that too. So as I wrap this up, understand something. And to recap, if you just hopped on, I broke down 5 ways to handle failure. Number 1, I said that you have to devalue individual attempts. Number 2, be proud of your pre-success. You have to see yourself as successful before the success comes. Point number 3 was don't be surprised by failure. That's one of the best ways to handle failure. Don't be surprised by it. Number 4, know your natural advantage. And then finally, the one that I just broke down was to embrace your humanity. I said all that to say this. With the right perspective, your failures and my failures will be like speed bumps in the parking lot. Yeah, it's annoying having to slow down and go over speed bump after speed bump. But eventually, you'll get to the highway and race off into the sunset. And for that to happen, you must keep driving. In order for you to be successful in any area of your life, in business, on that job, in a relationship, in a marriage, and I'm saying in a marriage because I know that there are married people watching and they can attest to what I'm saying. You got to be able to keep pushing. Every day is not going to be Sunday. Trust me. Every day is not going to be Sunday. Or every day is not going to be the Sabbath day, where you'll be able to rest and have peace. It's not going to happen like that. That's not reality. There are no fairy tales when it comes to relationships and marriage. There's no fairy tales. But one thing that I do know is that if you're able to push through the pain and the tears, through the highs and the lows, then you'll be one of the ones who made it. One of the ones who didn't give up and run at the first sign of trouble. You will have and develop staying power and be able to be a testimony to someone else. Think about this. So I challenge you. Let's keep pushing forward. Let's keep driving forward. And we'll both do good and bad things. But the worst thing we can do is absolutely nothing. The worst thing that you can do is nothing. And believe it or not, the lack of failure is the greatest possible failure. Going through life not experiencing failure, playing it safe, being afraid to make a mistake, you're setting yourself up for the greatest possible failure. Why? Because you're not being true to yourself. You're not being who you are. We are all flawed. Behind the foundation that we put on, behind the makeup, behind the mental mascara, as I've said on previous podcasts, every man is flawed and every woman is flawed. But can you love yourself and embrace your imperfections? And believe it or not, a lot of people cannot. And that's why they're in the mess that they're in now. The lack of failure is perhaps the greatest possible failure. New frontiers, it require experimentation. And experimentation means occasional and frequent failure on the way to success. I challenge you, don't fear failure. Why? Because it's not as bad as it seems. And I mean that in all sincerity. Do not fear failure. And I'm speaking as someone who used to have a fear of failure. Because I used to specialize in doing what everybody expected me to do. But it wasn't until I experienced failure that I have grown and evolved into the person that many of you all know and love today. So having said all that, I want to thank each and every last one of you who took time out of your schedule to hop on. I trust that it was of value to you, and I trust that you have gained a better understanding of how to handle failure, how to handle setbacks, because it's inevitable. It's going to happen, but it doesn't have to kill you. And like we know, what doesn't kill you, sure enough, will make you stronger. In life, you have two choices. You can make moves or you can make excuses, but you most certainly cannot do both. Thank you so much again. I will be back before you next Tuesday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time on another edition of the Motivation to Elevation Facebook Live podcast. Once again, it's yours truly, Arian Tyson, the Moving Motivator, signing off. Good night. God bless.